Anybody fish?
Very nice. Everybody wants to confuse them. Yeah, 100%. As the rabbi says many times, Hayoim Kotzer v'amlocha meruba. Like that's how he starts his shir, right? No, I thought that's every. Some people. Every time I listen to his shir, that's how he starts. I thought that's like just an automatic thing.
Really late.
Running late.
Yeah.
Ah, see, it's good to get the inside story. Then,
But you start every class like that. You're absolutely right.
Take.
Mm-hmm.
Right, she must literally shy 80. And you said, wow.
Did the rabbi ever speak about not making Kiddush between 6 and 7?
No. Do what?
The rabbi ever mentioned like what to do? Okay.
About what?
So after this shir, it'll be a good idea to ask your Rav what to do.
No, he said he didn't quite decide when 6 and 7.
No. That's what he said?
I
don't think it's a joke. I think it's we'll see. We'll see how that's actually true. We'll see. Okay.
Kids are.
They're all holding. Yeah.
Everybody has 2 pages.
There's 2 double-sided pages. We'll skip around one to the next, and we'll see where it goes. So let's start off with speaking about astrology in general. Okay, first of all, the question is, there's a bunch of. Let's get to the best question, I think, that was asked. There's a website called AskTheRav.com, which is there's a Rav in Crown Heights called Rabbi Broin that put together a website where people could ask him questions. You could also call him, but there's also like a database because people are asking questions. So then you can actually search the question, and then you could see how he answers it. Because
Can you email or
you could email. It's a chat, really. It's a website, so I think it's anonymous. Yeah. So let's see. What he did was there's a question. Imagine such a question. He says, let me see if I have it listed here. Okay, so this is the question, and imagine you're a Rav, and you need to kind of parse through the question and understand what's really going on. Okay, so I know the minhag of many is not to make Kiddush between 6 and 7, meaning Friday night between 6 and 7. Now, let's say Ma'ariv is what? Let's say 5:20. One with Kabbalah Shabbos on Friday was 5:20. Let's say 5:30.
Here 5:10.
Oh, 5:10. So it's easier over here. Okay, so right. So then, let's say if davening usually takes, depending on the chazan, let's say 15, 20, 25 minutes. So then, in order to make Kiddush either before 6 or after 7, so either you wait another hour or you need to rush home to get there at 6 or 7. So this person is saying that I know that my minhag, first of all, this person, I'm guessing it's a man because of the question, but I know the minhag of many is not to make Kiddush between 6 and 7. Okay, this was what I remember my custom in my parents' home, meaning in my parents' home. I grew up also having this thing.
My parents were also.
Right. Okay. So now comes the question. My question is, sometimes this leads to stress in the house. Either rushing through Shalom Aleichem to get on time and rushing from Shul home. So when you're rushing home, so by the time you come home, you're already overwhelmed that is it time, is it not time? And then you're really rushing Shalom Aleichem. That by itself doesn't seem like it's stressful, but I guess this person is saying that it's stressful. Okay. On the other hand, we have a house of young children at home. They're waiting till 7 can lead to chaos sometimes. Okay. So kids are impatient and hungry. He's saying a fact. Kids are impatient and hungry. In addition, we have guests, and this can add pressure. So is there room to be makel on this custom? So imagine someone asking this question and asking the question to a Rav. So this question comes to, we need to try to figure out what is there's different levels in halacha. Let's say, we all know, let's say there's a mitzvah d'oraisa or a mitzvah d'rabbanan. Let's say the Torah itself says to do something, or Chachamim enacted or initiated something that we must follow. But obviously, there's a hierarchy, and then it gets from that all the way down to, let's say, to a minhag, which is just that we are doing something. We it has become common practice that we do. But obviously, that common practice cannot negate something that's on the higher on the totem pole, higher on that arc.
So, Deraisa, Rabbanan, Minhag.
There's minhag, let's say, would be the low. Obviously, something that's not even a minhag.
Like Hanhaga.
Right. Minhag is kind of the same word. But
No,
minhag, when
minhag
people
is-
say something is a minhag, is it's used in the form that it's already an accepted it's action. Like this is what we do. This is already accepted in many communities.
You mean
said minhag of
Cholent.
Echledin.
Let's say like cholent. Like
Bagel.
right.
Bagel.
Like what's more important, right? Having cholent or
You
being happy on Shabbos, you know?
Cholent.
What's more important? So
Okay.
obviously, so obviously, some might say cholent because what do you mean? We all have cholent, and I remember, you know, and someone might say that person remembers their family not being so makbid on being happy on Shabbos, but somehow cholent. Well, they were makbid on
So
cholent.
some arguments is because of by Pesach, by saying we have onions. Because by now at the time it's all they had, it's all they able to find or something. So it's becoming
Right, and then we are makbid to actually have. It's important to have onions because this is how it already became status quo. But obviously, it's not to negate. It's
Like the Shema.
there are some truvas, some trials of truvas. If you want to look into it, you could see that sometimes actually it ended up being that minhag, that in halacha you see that minhag is actually mevatel Torah. But that's not. It has nothing to do with our
It
conversation.
doesn't say minhag of Echledin. If in my country for 100 years you did this one, it's a din. Can't change it.
That's what I'm saying. It's a Hanhaga. It's not
More
a
than Hanhaga.
what?
It's more than
No,
a
Minhag is more than a Hanhaga.
Right.
The Rambam, yeah,
What he's
Torah,
saying, I
yeah.
think, is more of a Hanhaga. This is what
Torah,
people did,
yeah.
but it's not a Minhag.
Right. Okay. So imagine you're the Rav, and you get such a question. So it used to be that when someone asks a question, the person knows the Rav knows the person, and the interaction is in person. So you could have a conversation. If the Rav wants to look deep, you know, try to understand and parse through the question, it's possible. But with this, you just have a question. It's like you don't know the person, you don't know what the person even means. So you need to kind of understand. That's what shimush ends up being, especially today, or really, you know, forever. There's always been a shimush involved with being a rav. Is that you need to try to figure out what the person is really saying, what the question really is, and knowing just how humans act, and then the way. Because you're able to understand that, so then great. So then you're able to know what Allah is. But if you were just to know Shulchan Aruch itself, even if you know it by heart and you're able to come up with answers based on Shulchan Aruch, but then when you're actually talking to the person might be asking a completely different question. So obviously, you see from this question that something's going on. This person has a minhag, but then he doesn't really understand. Well, either he understands or he doesn't. For sure, it's good that he's asking the question because he sees that there is a question involved. Imagine if he would just say, "No, you have to wait from 6 and 7, and that's it." Or to say, "No, what's 6 and 7? We have to, you know, if it's stressful, stress is bad, and therefore we have to do whatever we need to do in order to not have."
Why white wine is okay?
White wine it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter between white and red. That's something that came up that there's no like it's not written anywhere. It just became right. I also heard it. Somehow it just became that people hear about it, but there's no right. But even exactly. So that right, very good. So that you do see it written you know, the last 100 years or even more, negating that that white wine is something different. But people do talk about it, right? Okay, good. Just 2 weeks ago, my neighbor asked for white wine during 6 and 7, and I said, like, like it's not a thing. He also learns, so he's like, yeah, but like I would rather do, if I'm gonna make between 6 and 7, I would rather do white.
Father.
So I'm not gonna. Okay.
No, but my milk is a mistake. Supposed to be 6 hours after from Chatzot. We just make it from 6 to 7, but actually it's supposed to be a quarter to 12.
Right, but it ends up being average anyways. Really, if you would want to say it's not really 6 hours after Chatzos, it's really the first hour of Shabbos. But really, we're talking about the first hour of Shabbos. The average, if Shabbos would be, if the day would be between, 12 hours day, 12 hours night, then we would get, okay. So now we see, so let's go to see what's going on over here. When the Arizal made it, I guess, acting on Kabbalah, like not mainstream, but at least he got it more into the forefront. So then one of the things that became common practice was to have tikkune Shabbos, which we say to now if you look at a bencher, it might say tikkune Shabbos. But really, what is tikkune Shabbos? Because Kabbalah's Arizal is very into having tikkunim, like perfecting, like finding some issue and perfecting it. So tikkune Shabbos is like how we act at the beginning of Shabbos. So including within that would be Kabbalah Shabbos, like the whole thing of Lefon Ran, all these Kapitel Tehillim, and especially Lechadoidi. All these things were only enacted then, which was posted in the like just a few hundred years, whatever, 500 years ago.
Before that, Shabbos, you have an ordinary Meyer?
Yeah, you just start. Well, it wasn't ordinary Meyer because we didn't mention Shabbos. We did have a Mekadosh HaShabbat in Shmona Esrei, but there wasn't Kabbalah Shabbos. There wasn't Kabbalah Shabbos beforehand. So, and then besides that, also he enacted that there should be Shalom Aleichem. You would come home right away, come home right after daven, come home right away and say Shalom Aleichem.
Wait, this is Arizal?
This is the Arizal.
So before that, was the one this is before that?
It was just Kiddush.
Thank you.
That way.
Yeah.
You wanted to know why, especially between 6 and 7, did not. Yeah, what's the issue?
Right. So we'll get there. We're explaining now.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
that concept of the witching hour.
Yeah, no.
It's meaning of the.
Well, it's not.
Yeah,
It,
I've heard of this.
Yeah. It's a good question.
Yeah.
It's not really a Jewish. It's not really a Jewish thing. I mean, it's mentioned in Kabbalah, but it's more of like a it's like a it's like a science. At least at that point, at that time, in those years, hundreds of years ago, it was like a science to know astrology. Like
Is it Trump's fault because of that?
yeah. Who's that? Yeah.
You said we're going to get some reasons.
Yes. So we're getting Shalom Aleichem. Okay. So now
אשת חיל הוא מת, האריזה make Shalom Aleichem. אשת חיל
it was all around to say these things was enacted either by him or his students or his students. It was around that period.
Oh.
So each it's like a Mizmar LeDavid. It was not made by Arizal. It's a capital. It's capital. Ish's Chayil is in Mishlei. Shir Hashirim is in Shir Hashirim. Right, but to say it at that time.
Every Friday night. Wow.
At that
I
point,
didn't know that.
no, I didn't know that.
No.
Or he was there?
Then what happened?
That's video.
So then in Tikkun Shabbos, it mentioned Tikkun Shabbos is not a halacha sefer per se, but it is mentioned as like the first iteration, the first sefer of Torah, which alludes to this. Then Shabbos comes. The first hour of Shabbos is the hour that moves from a good a good hour to a bad hour, an hour that is being that is under control of a good malach and a good planet, well, not constellation, more planet, a good planet, and then but also it moves into an hour with a bad hour being controlled by a bad malach, by the worst malach, and a bad planet. So now,
There's some other application is it control?
no,
So it's like
because you could
like
well,
planet
okay,
took
there's
over.
few things. Either you could say that it's not even true and it's a bunch of bubba, no offense to bubbas, but a bunch of bubba mices. That's one. The Rambam is very into that in many different aspects in about shadim on a bunch of such things. And that is just like not completely not true. And all the times that the Gemara mentions it, it's just because people are complaining about it. So like, okay, fine. So we'll make a big deal about it, but it's not like it's actually true. But that is more of that's not the accepted opinion. That's not the most popular opinion. Most popular opinion is that it's actually true. But first of all, but first of all, it is not.
It's mixed now. Now it's right.
First of all, it's not. First of all, it's not. It doesn't cause actions. Meaning, it would be, let's say, if someone has the urge to be happy, it's not that he's for sure going to be happy. It's he still has to act on it. The same way, the other way around. If someone has the capacity for evil, for let's say for murder, it doesn't mean that he's for sure going to be a serial killer. It just means that he has an urge to be a murderer. So then, like Gemara mentions, even in those specific Gemaras, it says that to be someone that's a doctor might be he's dealing with blood. But it doesn't mean that just because he likes to deal with blood, therefore he's going to be a murderer. He could be a sheikhet, he could be a moyo, he could
Politician.
be dirty, like a dirty money. Like if someone is has, it's like in many things. If someone likes money, if someone likes to be an entrepreneur, let's say, it doesn't mean that he's going to end up in Aronsville. It could mean that he's going to do the right thing. It doesn't, right? No. So obviously, so so that's the accepted opinion. So let's say with this whole thing about each month, each hour being different. So what happens is Shabbos is the one day of the week that not the one day of the week, but with Shabbos, with coming in Shabbos, with making sure that Kiddush starts right away. Kiddush starts right when Shabbos comes in. So being that, the Arizal is very into that. Really, Halacha is also into having Shabbos early. But Arizal also is into making Kiddush right away, coming home, rushing home to make Kiddush. So then they have to remind everybody that, hey, don't want to make Kiddush during that hour of 6 and 7. Why? Because that's the hour that the Samach Mem, Samal, which is usually people call just Samach Mem because it's the evil, the Satan, right? And Mars. Mars is the planet that has control over that hour. So because that has to do with suffering and anger and all these things, so we don't want to make Kiddush during that hour. So therefore, at first they just said to make sure to make Kiddush right away. But then a few years later, it already became that if you're doing 6 and 7, if you don't rush home, then you need to wait for the hour afterward. So by now, that actually maybe happens to happen. That's maybe why people say like, oh, white wine is going to be okay because they think that the whole issue with Mars is because Mars is red, but really has nothing to do with the color of the. If you look and it's never mentioned that the whole issue is red. Even blood is not that blood is red, and therefore Mars is red. It's not that connection. It's really that it has to do with pain and suffering. So therefore, because Kiddush, we don't want to inaugurate Shabbos in such a way. We don't want to be in control. We don't want our Kiddush to be controlled by such a pretense, by such bad behavior. So therefore, we don't want to make Kiddush then. But therefore, we also see that Shalom Aleichem. This also has to do with the same time when it started being mentioned that when we come home, there are two malachim. There's a bad malach and a good malach. And if the house is set, if we make Kiddush right away, and we say Shalom Aleichem right away, and the table is set, then the good malach gives a bracha that the next Shabbos should be just like this Shabbos, and then the bad malach needs to say Amen, because there's no way to argue, because they see that Shabbos is brought in a good way, correctly. But on the other hand, if the Shabbos table is not set and Kiddush are not made right away, then the bad malach says that it should be just like this next week, and the good malach has to say Amen. So now, getting back to this question, this is my when I was looking. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, well, you country for Samach Mem Lamed. What's Lamed?
Aleph Lamed. Samach Mem Aleph Lamed is Samal is the name.
Mars is
I have to say that. Samach Mem is like
Mars is just a word in
it's an acronym. It's like Rosh Hashanah. So
no.
Sutton, Mars.
No, here. No.
As far as the day helps you work with.
I have a question. If you Makabel Shabbos before 6, right? Does the negative hashpaz between 6 and 7 get negated?
No, it has to do with just the hour. Meaning, like if Shabbos comes in, let's say now, well, let's say you take in Shabbos early, you take Shabbos in late. If during the year, Shabbos could be earlier or later. So then if you think that it's just because the first hour of Shabbos, so then it would always change.
Where does that fit in with changing the clock?
Very
because
good.
if we would decide we're going to make this, we're going to move the clock forward 2 hours. So instead of it being 10:35, it's now 12:35. So does that affect the 6 and 7?
Yeah.
Because we decide it's now 12:35, not
because
10:30.
it's really the hour.
It's astronomical. It's not
right.
based on my
Exactly.
watch.
It's not based on the watch. Therefore, if you change your watch, it just goes to the next hour. Meaning, right now, it's not really 10:33. It's just that it says on the clock that it's 10:33. So if the government would start saying, no, right now it's 1:30.
But that 6-7 o'clock phenomenon happens during the time of the year where clocks are correct, right?
That's just because the 6 and 7 is just because the average of the day. If Chatzois would be 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock would be the end of the day, the end of like Shkia or Tzeis, whatever it is, like when the sun goes down. Technically that's Shkia, but whatever. If the night would start at 6 and 12 o'clock would be Chatzois. So then 6 to 7 would be the first hour of the night, but that's really just the average. But here, let me.
One more question. No, many astronauts should have a million. They make Kiddush show up the mark very night. Right, right. You hear
They're not worried about this.
No, besides, this is a good idea anyway.
Make it show Friday night.
Yeah, I think it's in halacha anyways. You see, because in halacha you have that's one of the reasons why there's a whole question if you're able to make Kiddush at home afterwards.
Actually, if you hear Kiddush,
if you're not Yotze,
right, meaning you are. Even if you're Yotze, you're able to make Kiddush again. Just Havdalah is another issue.
So this whole thing you're talking about, is it based upon the astronomical 6 and 7, or is it just the government to decision?
No, it's astronomical. And then
So when you personally, you don't make Kiddush between 6 and 7.
It's not really 6 and 7. Depends on the city.
6 and 7. It's just because
depends on the city.
1870.
Very good. I was going to mention.
It instituted this thing about standardized time for people of the railroad schedule.
Very good. Very good.
Okay, but it's not really.
Very good.
So
right.
So
there's a website called seventhhour.info. Serious, you could check. Astronomical. You don't go by time. Meaning, this whole thing here. Daylight savings time, we just explained that 6 and 7 or 7 and 8 doesn't mean anything. Meaning, it doesn't mean anything that, well, it does mean something, but when we're looking at when not to make Kiddush, it doesn't matter that, oh, now the government says that we need to move the clock forward or clock back. That doesn't mean anything. But really, the time zones itself, like you were alluding to, it used to be that each city had a different time, which in a way makes sense because what does time even mean? If time is for, let's say, the tides and to know how to the farming, when to start farming during or even simply going to for shoppers, one of the shoppers
You have to know the times.
right. Imagine if Shkia was always in every city, Shkia was a certain time. Imagine Shkia was always a certain time. So what would you have to do instead of changing Shkia? Instead of changing Shkia, you would have to change the clocks. Imagine every day you have to move the clock. Instead of saying, like, you got to look on your Zmanim app to see what time Shkia is, imagine if Chatzos is always 12 o'clock. Yesterday was 12 o'clock is different than today. Fine. But we're going to hold 12 o'clock is fine.
I have to check this every week.
You don't have to check every week because what this website does, seventhhour.info, it gives you the average of the year, the average time of when 6 and 7 is in that city. That's really what we're looking for. So two things. What makes that? How do we know when the average is? The average means when the actual chatzos is equal to the average chatzos. Each city is something different. Obviously, because Shkia, you would think, let's say Flatbush is different than, let's say, more east. More east or more west is obviously different. Why? Because time zones were started then in 1870, right? And then imagine if there were no time zones, right? Like the whole point of time zones is like it was getting dangerous because trains and everything wasn't going on. There was no way to know when things were going to go because everyone has different clocks. So when it became more of a global network, a global way of doing business, even from city to city, so obviously you needed more of a time zone to say this is what time it is. But then the more east you get, then time goes. What is it? Either it goes later or goes earlier. The more
It's earlier. In China, it's tomorrow. It's no longer today.
Right, but within the time zone, let's say here and right, Detroit is actually in the middle. Detroit is
We have the latest time zone for the
no.
Eastern.
What's the correct
Later,
the middle? So let's say the time zone. What this website does is tells you what time of the day will the average chatzos and the true chatzos will be. When will it actually be? So let's say in Flatbush, let's say would be 6, will be 5:56. Let's say why? Because on December 25th, which is actually why December 25th is a big thing by Goyim. They don't even realize what's going on, but it really has to do with the sun. But December 25th, the average midday and the actual midday is the same. December 25th, it happens 3 or 4 times a year.
Yeah.
Maybe you know what day. I have it written down somewhere. Good. So April 8th, I think. That's some of my memory. Well, whatever. It happens a few times a year. So actually, one way, instead of looking on that website, if you want to actually look, you could just see December 25th, what time Chatzos is, by your day, longitude and latitude. You go by wherever you're living, and how do you know what even that place is? So you would go either to Wikipedia or just or the different websites will tell you exactly where it is, or you could backtrack from your Zmanim app because that's really what it's doing. It's checking to see your location. If you give it access to your location, it'll backtrack into what time Shkia is, what time Chatzos is, and then each time you walk, if you're going, let's say, on a plane, and you have your phone on off airplane mode, and you check your location. I'm not saying that obviously we're going to listen to the people in charge of the plane what to do, but if for whatever reason you forgot to turn it off and it keeps on telling you the location, you'll actually see that it keeps on changing. Like Mincha, there's actually Mimes Manim is a website that you can actually put in a flight number, and it'll tell you like the different stages of your flight, when Mincha will be, when
What's that called?
Mimes Manim. Probably not, because it has
Manim.
because
If
if it
you're an
would be
astronaut, it tells you if you're flying in
MySmoney.com.
space. For an
I don't know.
astronaut,
That probably not, because it goes by, it gives you, it takes your flight path. If you give a flight number, then it knows what your flight path will most probably be. Okay, so now so what's going on over here? So let's get back to the question. The question is, what happens if this whole thing is going to cause stress? If this whole thing is going to cause stress in the family, making sure that it's 6 and 7, or you have to wait an hour. I know everyone's hungry, and
Bali Halakha bring this as a Halakha Psuka.
yeah, Magen Avraham
All right.
he's not the first, but he's the most accepted of the first ones that
These two malachim, they are very old.
Doesn't take it as a
well, the Alter Rebbe says Yeshin is Horim, which is interesting. He doesn't say that this is what we should do. It says that there are those that are careful to not make Kiddush between 6 and 7.
And what's Minhag Chabad?
So Minhag Chabad is to wait.
Halakha L'Maaseh.
Is to wait.
So if this show
Is to make sure it's 6 or 7. But he's asking a Lubavitch Rav about this. So what does the Rav say? What does the Rav say? So he says, first of all, okay, so before we get to the answer, I think one more thing. What's really going on between these? What are mazoles in general? So those that say that it's really just like not true, that it's not that these constellations are having are causing havoc or having any control over our lives. It's really just it's really, even if it is, it's really just causing our emotional state, like the way we're feeling at that time. Let's say, like, why would someone be more and the whole time what the Gemara talks about Shadim, that it's walk with someone else at night, because Shadim are not are scared of twins, scared of peers. But some zugas, yeah, peers. But if you were to say that Shadim are really just like being either anxious or being depressed, so then it would make sense that someone that's at night, someone's gonna be more anxious when they're walking outside their house, especially that it says that Shadim are specifically when you're on the outskirts of town. What is it? Outskirts of town or in the forest. So obviously that's more scary. It's more anxious. It causes more anxiety. And why do Shadim not? Why are they scared of Zugais? Because if you're with someone else, so obviously you won't be as anxious.
And according to
right, so then you would say that Shadim, that evil spirits are really just emotional capacity to have anxiety and depression and things like that.
And according to this line of thinking,
so and then it's not that we believe in ghosts. It's really just inner turmoil. So then so if that's the case, so then let's get back to what's going on the first hour of Shabbos. The first hour of Shabbos. The first hour of Shabbos is we're going from the constellation which is governed by a good malach, and then it's going into the next hour which is governed by a bad malach. So then when a person comes home and the Shabbos table is set, and people go to Shalom Aleichem and have Kiddush right away, so then it's not stressful, because everything is going correctly. So like there's no reason to be stressed out. So then automatically the good malach, so to speak, let's say being happy, being content, being calm, tranquil, tranquil is automatically going to happen because of all these things that are happening. So but if the table is not set, so then so then if someone that makes a big deal if something is not set, so then obviously that person will be anxious.
The same thing
It makes sense. So then so Yom Tif somehow it did not become a thing with Yom Tif.
What's the
Why? Because Yom Tif is really it's really about that hour of the day. Only Friday, only that day of the week, only that day of the week, because the mazalis are not separated by 24 hours. It's separated by 7. There are 7 mazalis. So it weaves back and forth. That's why Sunday goes by the sun, because the first hour of the day is governed by the sun, which is one of the 7 planets. Monday is the first hour of that day is governed by the moon. Monday and so on and so forth. Saturday is governed by Saturn. That's the first day hour of Saturday is governed by Saturn. That's why the days the other days, let's say Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, they are not those names don't coincide with the constellations, but in French, anyone knows French here? What's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday? I have it written somewhere here. That those days in French also have to do with that first hour. So Friday. So that's why Yom Tif is not the issue, and really you would think that Shabbos afternoon 3 o'clock is also Mazel. The Mazel of Mars also has to do with 3 p.m. The third, was it 9 hours since 3 hours after midday would be Shabbos afternoon. You should also not make Kiddush, but somehow that has not become the custom. So it doesn't. I don't see why, but somehow no one does it. But
so late, no, like Kiddush then.
either that.
yes.
Also, I mean, let's say
Yom Tov, it could be.
right.
Like
And
on
Yom
Rosh
Tif,
Hashanah, could happen.
or really somehow this just became I don't know. I couldn't find an answer to that question. But so now getting back to the original question. Imagine a father that asks a Rav question like, what should I do? I have this minhag of 6 and 7, but it's causing all this stress. So the whole reason of 6 and 7 not to make Kiddush during 6 and 7 is because we want to have Shabbos Menucha. We want to be calm and to not have this problem. And if we're going to have, if this is going to cause stress and anxiety and et cetera, so then that makes no sense.
Isn't Shalom Bayis a Deraisa?
Right, so very good. So this is what, very good. So Shalom Bayis, we already know, let's say, for example, the halacha, that if you only have money for either Kiddush or Shabbos Licht, we use it for Shabbos Licht because Shalom Bayis is more important than even Kiddush itself. So then to say that, I'm going to be makpid on this minhag to not make Kiddush between 6 and 7, and that's going to cause all the stress, it makes absolutely no sense. But then the Rav knows, like, if he's going to write this, especially, he's not just he's not just mentioning it to this questionnaire. He's writing it on his website. So if someone's going to read it, so now he doesn't have to follow 6 and 7. He doesn't have to care about it because it's going to cause stress. So what is he? He first starts off saying that we know, and it's true, that Torah was only given to bring peace into this world. The name, the signature of Torah is Shalom, Eloh HaShalom. So then, for sure, this minhag that is brought down in halacha, it can't be that it's inherently going to cause stress. Anything other than anything.
You know, so if you go to come to shul in the morning, it's stressful.
Right, very good. So then what does he say? So first, right.
That's your psak?
That's I'm not gonna I'm not going to diagnose the person. I'm not supposed to diagnose not in front of.
Chakra should not be in the afternoon.
Right. So what does he say? So really, if it's packaged in a way of in a certain way, so it might cause friction. But if it's brought up in a way of calm, in a way of calm and realizing that it's all for our own benefit, etc. So then it shouldn't cause these frictions in the first place. And the whole issue with having guests, either you could tell the guests, either you could mention to the guest beforehand, or even then that it's for their own good. And besides, you could have the conversation before, etc. And if they're hungry, anyways, if someone's hungry, for sure, children he mentions, either you give them food, and in halacha it says that if children eat, you're not allowed to stop them. On Friday night, you're not allowed to stop them. So for sure, you can have, and then you just make Kiddush later. Or you could, if it's such a big deal, so then you can make Kiddush before you go to shul. You can make Kiddush earlier. It doesn't say it does say that you're supposed to daven beforehand. But for sure, these issues should not be causing any friction in the first place. All the halacha itself.
You can make it just before Shkia?
Yeah. You can make from a plug.
You said them.
So then you even have some people that say, and it if you wouldn't know the background of this minhag, it would actually make sense. Someone might say, especially in certain weeks, that I am not going to go to shul Friday night. I'm not going to go daven with opinion. Why? Because I need to daven fast and because I'm not going to have time to come home to make Kiddush before 6 and 7, and I'm not going to wait till 7 o'clock. So therefore, I'm not going to daven with the minyan. Right? It makes sense. So wait a second. So it makes sense. It's not like we have to understand. Without this, right? If when someone comes up with such a svara, when someone actually starts acting this way, it's not that he doesn't have brain power. He can't come up with it. He has no brain power to realize what's going on. It's really just he doesn't know. He doesn't have the information. So if from 6 to 7 is the end of the world, so then what's a minyan being down with a minyan? Fine. But if you know the background, what's going on, so then obviously you wouldn't come up with such a svara in the first place.
What would the Arizal do?
Right.
What would he do?
So wait a second.
Home and daven,
so wait a second. So actually, the rabbi, my guess, I don't know what the I didn't see. I didn't check if the Arizal, what the Arizal did he? They made Kabbalah Shabbos in the field. He used to go to the fields to see the sun come down. Imagine such a
It's really up to the wife and children also.
To what?
Their Rizal's wife and children, if they would drink with him and they would wait.
Oh, meaning when he would come home to make Kiddush. Right. So the Rabbeim actually, the Lubavitcher Rebbe's actually would not make Kiddush right away. They would actually wait later. So maybe it's a way to not have anything to do with this whole issue. Like there's the Rebbe after Ma'ariv would daven Ma'ariv in the first minyan, which actually once the Rebbe mentioned that the reason why he davens by the first minyan is so that he davens in the minyan before all the people that talk come to shul.
Oh,
the people that talk will go to the next minyan, but people that are into davening right away, so they tend to be. I'm guessing that's what it means. They tend to be. So the Rebbe davened Kabbalah Shabbos right away, the first minyan, but then the Rebbe would go to his room to learn, and Bachram would sit and wait to walk the Rebbe home. So that could be. I mean, it's possible that has something to do with it also.
you said the Magen Avraham, does he say it's a halacha or an Eitzah Tova to worry about the 6 and 7s? Yes. Because I'm not aware of non-Hasidic communities who are mocking.
Oh, that's a separate Indian. Even a non Us, whatever, non,
You have the Lashon of the Magen Avraham?
yeah. He just quotes that this is what we do.
And what does he say?
He doesn't say minhag. He says that this is, he says that it's written this and this, that this is what we do. And therefore, we make Kiddush in the hour before, in Tzedek. Tzedek is the hour before Maiden. That's what Magen Avraham on
He takes it
19.
as a minhag or how?
He doesn't say minhag or not.
I'm just curious how he says it.
The Kosev Kaddish, like that it is done. I don't know if that means.
So I don't. All right.
It doesn't say like mitzvah. It doesn't say like mitzvah or something.
So he's describing what people do, and
Yeah, but then the Shulchan Aruch Adhas in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch on number 20 it says Yesh Nizharim, which is more like it gives you wiggle.
like I said, I'm not aware of non-Hasidic communities
so
who,
non-Hasidic. The thing with non-Hasidic communities
as a
is
if
it could
a
also
family
be it could also be like a swing. You would say maybe a swing to the right or swing to the left. Like when Chassidus became mainstream, or before it became mainstream, many people that felt that they were the status quo, so to speak, like kind of pushed the other way. Let's say like with Kabbalah Shabbos, many students, students in yeshiva will say, why should I be mevatel Torah to do l'chadaydi when Tanoim and Amoraim didn't say l'chadaydi, they said and learned. So why should I waste my time with Kabbalah Shabbos?
Has to be the
But
yeah.
So first of
Yeah.
all,
Yeah.
so you have to see, you have to look into. You can't just. It might make me feel good by doing that, but we have to see like what's the background. Just because Siddim do something and that person's not a chassid, he says he's not a chassid, so therefore he's going to be exactly the opposite. Because it's hard to just say that. It might make someone feel good that he's not acting that way, but you have to look at what's the background. So let's say Kabbalah is Kabbalah Shabbos a reason to. Is that Bittul Torah or not? I mean, we're saying Tehillim. So Tehillim, because we're not using our brains to think about it. Because davening itself, you could say that some people, let's say you do a Heicha Shemon Esrei because it's Bittul Torah, but really, if you go back, right, if you go back in time, well, like before, thousands of years ago, or let's say 2,000 years ago, davening was a big deal. It just became more common practice that davening, because people didn't know how to daven, like the avodah of davening. So then people slacked off with davening. But then it's not like it became Torah to not daven with the with such concentration. Whatever. So you have to realize, like, if it's something based on Chassidus itself, or it's really just Chassidus bringing out something that really is very true to Yiddishkeit. So that's the same thing. So between 6 and 7, no one's going to be arguing with the Magen Avraham. But if you look at between 6 and 7 as voodoo or whatever, or let's say Chassid, or like a something based on Chassidus, so then and I'm not basing myself on Chassidus, so therefore I'm not going to do it. But if that's quoted in Magen Avraham, I mean, what are you going to say, Magen Avraham? So you need to look at the like what caused these actions, and then you could see if your community follows those.
Now the Mishnah
guidelines.
Berurah doesn't bring this Magen Avraham. The does he? I mean,
I didn't look at the Magen Avraham or the Aruch HaShulchan. But even
because those would be later sources,
right? That's later sources.
And then more communities would have taken that on, like the Ashkenaz. I never heard of this thing.
Right, so maybe that's
like started
interesting.
davening Stiebel, schlepping in 6 and 7.
And even Stiebel's.
That's interesting. Why I didn't look into the
I grew up in the Stiebel, and Rabbi Forsky never made an issue. What they did in their house, I don't know, but he certainly wasn't something that was part of the way.
For sure, I mean, for sure, yeah. So what's
Yeah.
best thing to do is really to ask your personal competent Rav and ask what to do.
How does he end his letter? What does he say?
So so he finishes off. So first of all, he says, okay, looks how he goes like back and forth. It's beautiful. So although I'll just read it out. It's short. This is Rabbi Brian. I mean, we're already 11 o'clock, so but you don't have to do it, but it's going to take a minute. Although this minhag is brought in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, it is a minhag and not a din. Chazal teach us that great is peace, for the whole Torah was given only to make peace in the world. Accordingly, the mitzvah of Shalom overrides this minhag. Furthermore, we find that Shalom Bayis outweighs the entire mitzvah of Kiddush, for according to Halacha, if one cannot afford both Shabbos candles and wine for Kiddush, he should buy only candles, since they are there for the purpose of Shalom Bayis. At the same time, it is highly recommended that one do their best to explain to family members that this is our minhag and the significance of observing minhagim, especially a minhag mentioned in Pasuk. In fact, some consider this an issue of potential sakana, which is often deemed more serious than matters of Isra. Generally speaking, observing Torah customs bring about more peace and stability in the home and shouldn't cause conflict, right? The conflict usually stems from an inadequate presentation and packaging of the issue. If the family perceives the significance of this issue, they would fully appreciate your behavior. Obviously, if despite all attempts to present things in the proper manner, it still appears cause stress or tension, or if it affects the atmosphere in the house, then one definitely should not wait. When Kiddush is made within the hour wait time, it shall be made immediately upon arrival home from shul, which at least as.
But hamotzi is not an issue whatsoever.
Right. So hamotzi is the same.
5:45 and make hamotzi 6:15. No problem.
Yeah, because you're making Kiddush on the wine, and also it has nothing to do with the wine itself. If you're making Kiddush on hamotzi, it will be the same issue.
Because hamotzi is not an issue with this.
If you're making if you don't have wine or grape juice and you're making it on bread, on challah, it's the same. Challah, it shouldn't matter. Challah and wine is the same because really the problem is the Kiddush itself, not the making Kiddush on wine.
So, but what if you do?
So some ways, so really, you could also be if you're going to be makel, you could simply just say that when you mentioned Shabbos during Shemona Esrei, you already taken on Shabbos. That was really Kiddush. Kiddush on wine or on hamotzi is not really the Kiddush. Is really just an enactment.
It's like Atachon and Tanya, the same thing.
Right, very good with the tagon. So then he mentions that really you can make Kiddush even before dark, and even though it's not a minhag, but for sure that's better than making the Kiddush during that hour. And with guests, it shouldn't be. You should just explain it to them that it's really their issue too, and it's nothing. So then it goes back to the same issue with the family, and with children. So what does he finish it off? He finishes off, children do not need to wait for Kiddush to eat, not even for chinuch. Most likely the situation can be ameliorated somewhat if they are given something to eat until Kiddush is made. So in fact, if they are hungry, one is not allowed to stop them from eating. So that's how he finishes off. Yeah.
Thank you.
But now there's early Shabbos. Now Shabbos is like 4:15.